Now here are some vector graphics essentials every candidate must know before the A-level Cambridge exams. So to begin with, let's have a look at what vector graphics are made of. And as an A-level candidate, you should know the vector image definition, which says it is a digital image created using mathematical formulae to define shapes and lines, allowing for scalable, high-quality graphics. Now you should take note that vector graphics are a combination of nodes or points and paths connecting the nodes. Now these paths define the shapes and curves and lines mathematically. Unlike raster images or images made out of pixels, vector graphics can be resized without losing its form. So over here we have a visual presentation of the nodes and paths forming a line. The nodes are also sometimes referred to as anchor points. So we have the lines joining two anchor points, and each anchor point, you realize, do have handles. These handles can be used in changing the curvature of the line. So I'm going to go into Adobe Illustrator, which is a vector graphics software, for a quick demonstration. So using my pen tool, which is right here, I'm going to create a curve. I'll press escape to take off this line. And when we carefully observe, we have our curved path. But to observe the handles, you need to click on the direct selection tool, this one, and click on the path to reveal the handles and the nodes. So we have one node here, over here, and these are the handles. Now to make the handles more visible, so that selection doesn't become a problem, head into Edit, go to Preferences, and select Selection and Anchor Display. So over here you can increase the size of the handle. When you are done, click OK. So now we have bigger handles and more obvious nodes. So the nodes are more visible now. So you can now click and drag to reshape your curve. So our next essential skill every candidate must know is how to draw shapes, as in basic shapes and complex shapes. So you must know how to create fundamental shapes like the rectangle, circles, arcs, stars, polygons, and the spiral shape. You must also know how to create complex shapes with some of the tools listed in the presentation below. So we are going to head into Illustrator again for another demonstration. So to create basic shapes, we head to the icon that looks like the rectangle. When we click and hold, we have a list of shapes we can create. We have the rectangle tool, we have the rounded rectangle tool, with the ellipse tool, polygon, star tool, and the flare tool. So for instance, I can create a rectangle just by clicking and dragging across the artboard. Now I can bring my cursor close to any of the handles inside the rectangle to click and drag and form a rounded rectangle. If you are given specific dimensions, if say you are given specific dimensions, you click on the rectangle tool and then click on the artboard once. Then you enter the dimensions you are given. Let's say you are given 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters. So 10 centimeters width, 5 centimeters height. Yet you have pixels in here. You can still go ahead and type in your 10 cm and down here 5 cm. You see that Illustrator does the conversion for you into pixels. It's because the units of this document was set up in pixels. If you want to change the units of your document, head to File and then come down to Document Setup. And over here, change the units to the required unit that you want to use it in. So let's say I want to use it in centimeters. I say cm. Then I click OK. Let's head back to our shape tools and select ellipse tool. Let's say we've been given a dimension, so I'll click here once and say we have to draw a perfect circle of 15 centimeters. So I can enter 15 here. Since the document is already set up in centimeters, I don't need to bring the cm once again. And down here to 15. I can use this chain to lock the width and the height. And then click OK. So we have our perfect circle of a width and height of 15. Note that this circle we've created does not have a fill. So it's just the path or just the outline. And let's say I want to form or create an arc or a semicircle out of this. So all I need to do is click my direct selection tool, select any of the anchor points I want to take out. Let's say I want to take this one out. So I click on it once and hit delete. So in so doing, I have an arc or a semicircle. We can also create shapes with multiple sides using the polygon tool. So I'm going to click and hold once again and go to polygon tool. Once again, I'll click on my artboard once. And let's say I'll give it a radius of 15. And number of sides, I want 6. Click OK. And there you have it. I want to resize it. I go to any of the diagonal corners, hold shift and reduce the size. Use my selection tool to move it in place. Now let's go ahead and delete some of these shapes and pick the next tool, which is the star tool. Once again, I'll click on the artboard once. I want a 5-point star. I'll leave these dimensions as they are for now and just click OK. Now, if you're using later versions of Adobe Illustrator, you should see these 3 handles after drawing the star. We can use this radius 1 to increase and reduce how the star looks, and this one as well to increase or reduce the size. And the last handle, which is this one, you can use it to increase or reduce the number of points the star has. So I'm going to go back to the rectangle we first created, select it, and I would like us to take note of the stroke size. So we have 6 points here. So I'm going to hold down shift and reduce the size of the rectangle and see what happens to the stroke size. It reduces as well. But what if you are required to maintain the same stroke size? So let me press Ctrl Z to bring back our rectangle. So what you will do is select, make sure it's selected, right click on it, go to Transform and select Scale. Here you uncheck Scaling Stroke Effect. So I'm going to uncheck this, click OK. And now we have our 6 points. So how if I reduce it, the outline size still remains 6 points. It doesn't change. So the flare tool, which is the last item on our shapes list, is normally used in creating a light blue. So let's say I have an ellipse with a red fill, and let's say we don't have a stroke, and I draw a quick circle like this. All I need to do is pick the flare tool and create a light bloom within the circle. To create complex shapes, let's begin by manipulating some of the basic shapes we've already drawn. So with a fill of orange and no outline, I'll pick the ellipse tool, and this time around, instead of drawing a perfect circle, I draw an oval like this. Next, I'll pick the curvature tool, this one, and double click on the horizontal points. So I double click here, I double click there. Now this shape can also be achieved by drawing two circles, two perfect circles, like one. And to create a duplicate, I'll just hold an Alt, click and drag downwards. Like this. Now I'll select both circles and use the tool called the Shape Builder tool, this one. Now the cursor is on a plus, has a plus sign. So I'll change it to minus, meaning I want to take out. So I hold down Alt to do that. So when I hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, the minus sign appears. So all I need to do is draw over of the areas I don't need. It also creates the same shape. The only difference is, since we use two circles, we will have two copies of that shape. For a second example, let's go ahead and draw a shield. And to achieve this, we can draw two circles and a rectangle. This time around, I'm not going to need a fill color, so I'll take that off. Pick the ellipse tool, draw a perfect circle, pick my move tool, hold down Alt, and create another one. Select both circles, use the move tool to bring them to the center, like this, of your artboard. Now this time around, I'll pick the rectangle tool and make sure I start from the edge of one of the circles, like this. Go to the other edge and come down to where the circles intersect. That's where I end. And then I pick the curvature tool, come to the top part of the rectangle, click and form an arc. Now I select all the shapes and I pick the Shape Builder tool once again. Hit the minus sign to take out all the areas I don't need. So hold down Alt to bring up the minus sign, and I draw over the areas I don't need. Oops, sorry. Like this. I don't need these corners as well. So I'm going to zoom in, Control plus, minus, minus. So we have our shield. Now since the shield, since we use 3 shapes in creating it, we will end up having 3 copies. So now you can go ahead and fill them with the colors as you may be required. So what if you're confronted with a complex shape like this one of an hourglass? The first thing you have to do is to visualize the simple shapes that you can make out of this one. Now the first simple shape you can recognize is a rectangle. For the glass itself, what I can also recognize over here is another rectangle. And down here, what I see is a triangle joined to this rectangle. If you visualize complex shapes in basic shapes first, or in a combination of basic shapes first, it makes your work easier. So let's go ahead and create this together. First, I'm going to select all and resize it and put it somewhere in the corner. And I'll begin with drawing the glass first. So I will pick the rectangle tool. For this, for now, I'll need no fill. Let's give it a blue fill. So I'll give it a light blue fill like this. And a stroke with an outline of 5 will do. So I'll go ahead and draw my rectangle. And the next thing I want to do is to add a triangle to this. But there's a simpler way of doing this by just adding an anchor point to the midsection of the lower part. So I'm going to go to where the pen tool normally is and select add anchor point. And I'm going to make sure I click on the path, not on the shape, not within the shape. When I click within the shape, I get this warning. When I click outside the shape, I get this warning. So I need to make sure I click on the path. So you keep hovering over it where it says intersect. Means that it's perpendicular to the center of the rectangle. So I click and I create my anchor point. Now I'll go up here and where it says convert, you see there's convert to corner and there's convert to smooth curve. I want to convert it to a corner, so I click on that once. Then I pick my direct selection tool, this one, and click and drag downwards. I can hold shift whilst I'm doing that. Now that I'm done with the top part, I'll pick my normal selection tool, hold down Alt and make a duplicate, and hold down shift whilst I rotate it 90 degrees. And I'll bring it close to the other one. Select both and make sure they are horizontally aligned. Now go into the properties panel on my right and look for Pathfinder. Now if you don't find Pathfinder under the properties tab, you can always go into Windows and go down and click on Pathfinder here. So it just opens a tab of the Pathfinder, and then I select Unite, the first one. Now I pick my direct selection tool to bring up the handles, the curvature handles. I want to curve in 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 corners. So I'll click on this one, then I hold down shift whilst I click on the other corners I want to curve in. Because I want a uniform curvature, I select all, these 4 points and click and drag inward. Now I want the curvature in the midsection as well, so I'm going to do a selection of the middle like this and click and drag outward just a little bit. Now for the top and the bottom, I'll pick the rounded rectangle tool, still with the stroke size 5. Make sure I select brown. Now when we do that, we realize that our hourglass tends to brown because our hourglass was still selected. So I'll hit Ctrl Z, click away, make sure nothing is selected on. Now I pick my rectangle. Once again, pick the brown. And then I'll draw my, I think it is the top cover also. And hold down Alt whilst I bring down another one. Now you see they are not aligned. So I'm going to select the entire project and do a horizontal align once again, so they are all aligned. So for what appears to be the white sand flowing downwards, I'm once again going to use the same method I used in drawing the glass. Pick the rectangle tool. This time I will not need an outline, but I'll need white as a color. So I'll draw my rectangle down here. Let it go up a bit and pick the add anchor point tool. Make sure I hover and hit the path. Click on convert to corner. Pick the direct selection tool. Click on the anchor you created and drag upwards. You can hold shift so that it doesn't veer, of course. So okay, so shift like this. I'm going to create a duplicate of it for the top part and rotate it 90 degrees. It's just going to be a smaller version of what we have at the top. So I'll hold down shift whilst I reduce the size and bring it this way. Can squeeze it a bit. And I'm now going to add curves to the corners. So I'll select the corners I want to curve in. Once again, click, hold down shift, click, and drag inwards. I'll do the same for this. I'll click, hold down shift, and drag inwards. And I'll bring it closer. And to create this line here, I'll just pick the line tool, or the line segment tool, this one, and make sure it has no fill, but it has a stroke. So I'll increase the size of the stroke to say 5, and I will just draw a line whilst holding shift through the center of both shapes. Now it's not going through the center, so I'll use the right arrow key to redirect it to the center. Or you can hold down shift, select all 3 shapes and do a horizontal align. There are instances where Illustrator can help us to create complex shapes out of basic ones. Let's use this rectangle and text as an example. First, with the rectangle, head up to Effect and come down to Warp. To your right, you see a list of preset shapes, you can choose from. Let's begin with the arc. So Illustrator will go ahead and arc your rectangle for you. And there's also a dialog window to make changes to the bend. At this point, we are at a bend of 50% on the horizontal axis. When I drag it to my left to say -50, I have the opposite. When I drag my bend back to 0, it comes back to the normal shape. You can drop down the style menu here and still have the list of preset shapes. Let's say I select arc lower and bend it 50%. You have a bulge at the bottom of your rectangle. And when I drag it to the opposite end, I have this shape. Let's click OK and head to the text. I'll go to Effect, Warp. Let me choose Arc Upper, and I have this shape. When I choose Arc Lower, I have the opposite. When I choose Bulge, I have this effect. Let's click OK to commit. Let's say we want to draw the blade of an axe using the warp tool. Pick your rectangle shape. Let's give it a color of gray. And let's go ahead and draw our rectangle. Once again, we head up to Effect, go to Warp, and this time select Shell Lower. Let's change the bend style from horizontal to vertical. And then we can tweak the bend till we get our desired blade. When you're okay with it, just click OK. Use one of the corners to resize it. And the next obvious shape we can add is a rounded rectangle and with a brown color. Another tool that can help us create complex shapes in Illustrator is when we go to Effect and go to Distort and Transform. Let's take Free Distort for instance. I select my rectangle or square, go to Effect, Distort and Transform. I'll select Free Distort. Over here, you are given a preview of your square, and you can select any of the points and make your own adjustments, just like a freehand tool. When you're okay with what you have, just click OK. Then you have your distorted shape there. Next, we have Packer. I go back in there, select Packer and Bloat, and I drag my handle to my left. This is what you end up with. For bloats, go to the same location and drag the handle to your right. Now for roughen, we go there once again, select roughen. In all instances, just make sure the preview is enabled. Drag your handle, the size handle to your right. You can increase the amount of detail, and there you have it. Looks like a patch. For the zigzag, as the name implies, I'll select my line. It also applies to shapes. Go to Effect, Transform. Select Zigzag. Here you can determine the size by dragging your handle to your right. Relative or absolute is whether you want it percentage wise or pixels or in pixels. Number of segments or ridges. In this case we have 4. You can change that. Let's change that to say 10. So we have 10 ridges here. And for the points, you can either select it to be cornered like this or change it to smooth. I'll leave it on smooth for now and click OK. Knowing how to handle layers is another essential for every exam candidate. You should know how to order your layers as to which one should be on top and which one should be beneath. You should know how to lock your layers or unlock them, or how to modify them by adding transparency and blending them with other layers. In this example, we have the face of a character. To the right, I have opened the layers panel, indicating all the layers that make up this image. In this case, we have 3 layers. We can use the eye icon to hide or unhide the layers. And there's this space to the right of the eye icon, which we can use to lock and unlock the layers. With layer 1 selected, I can click on this hamburger menu, this icon here, and go to options for layer or for layer 1. And here I have the option to name my layer. Let's say I can name it face. Keep the color on blue. Leave all these settings as they are and click OK. Now when I drop down this layer, it's made up of a sub layer. And when I click on this as well, these are the sub layers that make up this layer. In the same vein, you can select any of the layers, come back here and create a new sub layer. It will require you to name it, choose a color for it, or you can go by the color of the main layer. And when you're done, you click OK, and that layer will be active for you to create your drawing. Now when I select the blue layer, or the last one, layer 3, and I right click and I say arrange and say bring to front, you realize that it doesn't come to the front to cover everything that we have here. This is because it's on a separate layer. The arrangement or the rearrangement only happens within sub layers. So let's say I want to rearrange this eye, or let's say, let me look for the beard. Yeah, this is the beard. This is the beard layer. I right click, I say arrange, and I say send to back. Now because it's operating within the same layer, it moves to the back. Another thing we can look at is changing the opacity of the layer. Let's say I select this layer, the green one, the green background, and next thing I'll have to do is head to this icon, which is for appearance. If you don't have this icon showing here, you can always head to window and open appearance from here. First thing you will see is the opacity. Click on the link, and here we can drag our slider to our left to drop the opacity of that layer. Let me bring it back to 100. We can also use that hamburger menu, this one up here, to merge layers. Let's say I select all 3 layers by holding shift, and I go up here and I will say merge selected. When I close my drop down, you realize that everything is on one layer, and when I drop down, everything becomes a sub layer of that one layer. Another essential candidate must know is to how to scale, skew, reflect, rotate, share, and apply envelope and perspective. The concept of scaling is just about changing the size of your shape. And to do that, we can just simply make sure it's selected and drag from the diagonal corners whilst you are holding shift. This will prevent it from getting distorted. If I decide to do that without holding shift, I either end up with an oval or something distorted like this. But to go back, you can always press Ctrl and Z. You can also change the perspective of your shape by using the freehand tool, which is this one, or the free transform tool. And when you bring your cursor closer to any of the handles, the 4 handles, you see this vertical and horizontal shape, which you can skew your circle to the left or to the right. The reflection method works well just in case you want to create something that is symmetrical. So let's say we pick our pen tool, make sure we have a stroke, make sure we don't have a stroke. Let's take out the stroke, but we have a color, let's say orange. I'll start from the top, come to my right, click and drag because I want a little bend, come back to where I stopped. When I see the anchor, stop again, hold down shift once I come down a little bit, click, and when I realize that where I want to end is in line with where I started, I just click and go back up. Next, I'll pick my direct selection tool and make changes. I want this side to be curved in, so I drag this inwards like this. And I have half a shield. So I'll just say right click, transform, reflect. See, the preview gives you the opposite side. Since we want 2 halves, instead of clicking OK, click on copy. So all you do is just drag the other side or the other half to the side like this. So this will ensure that you have a symmetrical shape. So you can use a pathfinder to unite both shapes. So when it comes to rotation, we can use 2 methods. Let's say I want to draw a wheel. First, I'll pick my rectangle tool, select an appropriate color. In this case, I'm selecting gray. Or let's select brown. And I draw something like this. Place it somewhere here in the middle, at the top. And the next thing I can do is pick the rotation tool from the menu. And when I do that, it creates a crosshairs in the center of the rectangle. I'll have to click and drag that crosshairs to where I want my reference point to be. That is down here at the bottom of the rectangle. So I'll hold down Alt, click once, click again for the rotate menu to appear. Depending on the number of divisions you are required to provide, you enter here 360, which is a full circle, divided by the number of divisions you are required to provide. Let's say we are providing 10, so I bring 10. Instead of clicking OK once again, just click on copy. It instantly creates your first copy for you. And to complete this, just hold down the Control key and press D repeatedly till it goes round 10 times. I can now use the ellipse tool. Make sure it has no fill and give it, say, a black stroke. And since it's a wheel, I'm going to increase the size of the stroke and do this. I'm going to increase the size of the stroke further. And I can select all and make sure they are, horizontally and vertically aligned. First, I need to make sure these are one, so let me group without the wheel. Let me group these first. And I'll bring this here. Now if I select both and I do the vertical and horizontal line, I have reduced the size of this a bit. I can still increase the size of the stroke and bring in another ellipse. This time I give it, say, a red color. Make sure the stroke size is 1 or 0 and place this in the middle. Let's increase the size a bit. And there we have our simple wheel. Now I'm going to put this aside and then we're going to have a look at the second method. Let me group all and place this to the side of my artboard. And this time I'm going to pick the ellipse tool once again. Make sure the color is green. Draw a circle. Hold down Alt whilst I drag another circle to my right. And this time I'll use the Pathfinder tool. I'll not use the shape builder because there's something in the Pathfinder called intersect. This one. Click on it once and this time I have. So this one will not create two copies as we did earlier. So this time around I'm going to show you the second method where I'll go to Object and come down to Repeat. And I want it in a radial form, so I'll say radial. So instantly it gives you a rotation of the object you created. It also has handles with which I can increase or decrease the number of shapes. This is for increasing and decreasing. And this one is for taking out the number of shapes. I want everything, so, and this one is for widening the gap or bringing it together. Candidates must also know how to manipulate text, especially placing them on a path or fitting them into a shape. They must also know how to add gradients to text. To create text in Illustrator, we use the type tool. Click on the artboard. You can increase the size. And from the character menu here, the menu beside the character, drop down and select the font type. I'm selecting this font for the purpose of the tutorial, and I can use the transform handles to increase the size further. To make changes to your text, just double click, and when it's highlighted, you type out what is required. You can also make changes to the alignment. So let's say I bring my cursor to the second word and do this. This is left align. So with all the text selected, there's alignment here, which I can change to center or right align. To change the color, simply select the text, and from the palette here, we can change colors. We also realize in the palette that we have some gradients here. Let's try adding the gradient. When you try doing that, you get a black. This is because text directly doesn't handle gradients. So how do we fix this? With the text selected, we can go into where it says appearance, and where it says come down to the icons down here, and where it says add new fill, click on it once. Now you can drop down the fill and add a gradient from here. You can make changes to the gradient in the gradient tool by changing its colors. So the handles on this slider here represent each color in the gradient. So let's say I want to change this one. I'll just double click and click on it. When I want to increase its dominance, all I need to do is drag the sliders. I can take out some of the handles too by just clicking and dragging downwards. Next, let's look at how to add text on path. For that, I'll need my pen tool. And let's just draw, click, and then click again, and then just draw an arc. You can press escape to take this off. And for that, I will not need a fill, so let's disable the fill. But I'll need a stroke so that I can see where to place my text. Go ahead and pick the type tool. And as you bring it closer to the cursor, you will see another icon as like a curly line showing on your cursor, and just click. So it will give you some default text which you can type on. So let's go ahead and type. I'm typing hello world. You can go ahead and increase the font size as I'm doing now. And as you can see, it comes with some handles. When I bring my cursor close to the first handle, you see that it forms another arrow pointing to the right. This indicates where your text begins from. You can see our text began from here with the H. And this handle indicates where your text ends. Now if I go to the alignment and I say center align, you see that it tries to place my text in between the beginning and the end. Now if I decide to drag the ending handle to my left, it shifts the entire text to the left. Let me press Ctrl Z and do the same thing for the beginning. So in this case, it means I'm changing the beginning of where the text should be placed. We also realized that when we typed on the path, the actual line that we drew with the stroke disappeared. Let's head up to the main menu, the top menu where it says type, and look for type on path, and come down to type on path options. Here we can determine the effect we want to apply to our text, where we want to align it to the path. At the moment it's on the baseline. You can see our path is on the baseline of the text. If we drop this down and select center and ensure this preview is on, you realize that our path is now striking through the center of the text. We can use descender as well, which will send our text above our path, slightly above it, and ascender, which sends our text beneath our path. Let's bring it back to baseline and have a look at some of the effects. The default effects that we are using right now is the rainbow. This is skew. We have 3D ribbon, which sort of distorts it. And let me look at stair step and gravity. Let's go back to rainbow. And there's another option here which says flip. So that one turns it upside down. We can also make adjustments to the path on which we placed our text. And to do that, we can select the direct selection tool. When you do that, you realize that your nodes on the path appear. Click on any of them, and when you see the handle, just make adjustments to it. So let's say I want my path to go this way, your text will follow. Now we can apply the same concept when we are adding it to a circle. So let's go ahead and pick the ellipse tool. Hold down shift whilst you draw a circle. Make sure it has no fill. I can leave the stroke, pick the type tool, and from the drop down select type on path. Click on the stroke of the circle, and then you have your default text. So I'm going to type my text on it. And use the font resizing to increase the size. So you see how it clearly goes around. So it also has the handles of where to begin and end. So I'm dragging where it begins to my right, and this is where it's supposed to end. So you see it can go around and come and end here. Now there's another handle down here which allows you to flip the text inward or outward. So if I do this, you see that now my text is on the inside of the circle. So in so doing, now where my text is supposed to end, the handle is now where it begins. So I can drag this way. So as I mentioned earlier, we can also place text inside shape. And to do an example, I'm going to pick the ellipse tool. I'll give it a color, blue, and draw an oval. Next, I'll pick the type tool and type out a word. You can use the transform handles to increase the size and ensure that this layer is on top of the text. We can do that by going into the layers panel, which is not showing here for now, but don't panic. Just go into Windows and come down to layers, and then you have your layers panel. So At the moment, we have perfect the text on top of ellipse. So I can simply just click and drag ellipse on top of the perfect text. So let's close all this. And in the same vein, since they are all sub layers within the same layer, all I could have also done is just right click on the shape and say arrange, bring to front. Next, what I'm going to do is select both shape and text, go to object, envelope distort, and say make with top object. And then we have our text perfectly placed in the shape that we created earlier. So this method applies to any shape that you create, provided you ensure that you arrange and make sure your shape is in front of the sub layers. Last but not the least, let's take a look at how to create a clipping mask. A clipping mask ensures that only the area that is desired, or only the area that is within the clipping mask shape, must appear. So let's say we have the face of this character on this red background. All you need to do, make sure, is that they are one shape, a flat shape, or they are grouped together. Next, to create the clipping mask is to draw a new shape. Let's say I pick the rectangle tool, ensure that the color is black, and draw the shape on the area that you design. Let's say this is the area I want. This is the area I want of the character. Let's hide the yellow one in the background. Let's go to window, bring my layers panel, let's hide this. And yeah, this is the area I want. Let's say I want all I want is this. What it means is going to cut off all these areas and ensure that only what is within the black range appears. So I'll select both shapes or both groups, go to object and look for clipping mask down here, select make. You must know that aside vector images, clipping masks apply to normal images in Illustrator as well. So all you need to do is draw the required shape that you want on top of the image and go to object and select clipping mask. Now, aside masking other shapes, we can also go ahead and mask text. Let's pick our type tool and type some text, and I'm now going to add an image. So I'll go to file, place. I think I like this one. Then I'll say place. So you see that the image is following your cursor around, waiting for you to click and drag over the artboard. So I'm going to click and drag over the artboard where I want my image to cover. You can still use the transform handles to make adjustments. So I've placed the image over the text. Let's go ahead and send the image behind the text. So I'm going to say arrange, send to back. And I'm going to readjust where my text is going to be, and all I'll do is Ctrl A to select everything on the artboard since it's just 2 items, and look for clipping mask and say make. If you need a copy of representation slides I used in this tutorial, I have left a link in the description of this video. You can go ahead and download it and use it as your reference notes. And with that, we've come to the end of this tutorial. We have looked at most of the essentials that you will need in Illustrator. If there are any essentials that I've missed out, you can point them out to me in the comment section and I'll add a quick tutorial, or I'll explain how it's done in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share and subscribe. Until I meet you in the next one, it's bye.